Imagine a world without electricity, without microchips, without a single line of code. A world where the most complex machines are levers, pulleys, and water. Now, imagine that in this world, 2,000 years ago, some nameless genius whose name has been forever erased by time created a device so complex and sophisticated that it simply shouldn't have existed. A mechanism capable of predicting the movements of the planets, the phases of the moon, and solar and lunar eclipses with astonishing accuracy. A device that could be called the world's first analog computer. And this incredible artifact, this message from a long-lost era of geniuses, lay for to millennia at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. In the wreckage of a sunken Roman ship, waiting for its moments, its accidental discovery in the early 20th century was more than just an archaeological sensation. It overturned everything we thought we knew about the technological capabilities of the ancient world. It forced historians to rewrite entire chapters of textbooks and to ask, what other secrets does the past hold? What other incredible inventions, millennia ahead of their time, might have been created only to be lost in the abyss of the ages? This isn't just a story about a piece of rusted bronze. It's a story of lost knowledge, of a genius bordering on magic, and of the most mysterious technological artifact ever discovered. Before we dive into the main story, we'd like to ask for a little support. A like and a subscription would be the best way to thank us. Thank you. Now, prepare to plunge into a world of ancient mysteries and forgotten technologies. As we uncover the secrets of the Antikythera Mechanism, our story begins in the spring of 1900, in the waters of the Aegean Sea, off the coast of the tiny Greek island of Antikythera. A group of Greek sponge divers, led by Captain Dimitrios Kondos, was returning home from Tunisia. A violent storm forced them to seek shelter near the island's rocky coast. When the storm subsided, the captain decided to send one of his best divers, Elias Stadiatis, to scout the seabed for. In those days, diving was an incredibly dangerous business. The divers used heavy brass helmets and suits, with air supplied from the ship through a hose. They could only work at depths of a few dozen meters and for very short periods. Stadiatis descended to a depth of about 45 meters. A few minutes later, a frantic signal came from below. He was urgently pulled back on board. Captain Kondos assumed the diver was suffering from nitrogen narcosis, which can cause hallucinations. Stadiatis, trembling with terror, muttered about seeing a pile of rotting corpses of people and horses among the wreckage of some ship. The captain didn't believe him, but being a brave and curious man, he decided to see for himself. He put on the diving suit and personally descended to the same spot. What he saw astonished him. Lying on the seabed were not corpses, but numerous bronze and marble statues, blackened by time, scattered among the remains of an ancient vessel. The divers had stumbled upon a sunken Roman cargo ship that had been transporting priceless, treacherous works of Greek art intended for a wealthy Roman collector. It was a sensational find. The crew immediately abandoned their search for sponges and, after reaching an agreement with the Greek government, began the first major underwater archaeological operation in history. Over the next 2 years, working in incredibly difficult and dangerous conditions, they raised one masterpiece after another from the seabed. Bronze statues of youths, marble sculptures of gods, amphorae, glassware, and gold jewelry. One of the divers died during these efforts, and 2 others were left paralyzed by decompression sickness, or the bends. But they pressed on. Then one day, among the other finds, a shapeless lump of rusted bronze, encrusted with shells and calcified deposits, was hauled onto the deck. At first they mistook it for a fragment of a statue or a rock. It was about the size of a large book or a shoebox. No one paid it much attention. Along with other small finds, it was sent to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, where it lay forgotten for another 2 years. It seemed the story of this unremarkable piece of metal would end there. But in 1902, something strange happened. While sorting through the finds from the Antikythera shipwreck, archaeologist Valerios Day noticed that the formless lump had broken apart into several pieces. And inside, amidst the corrosion, he saw something incredible. Gears cogwheels, precisely fitted, with perfectly cut triangular teeth, and there were also faint inscriptions in ancient Greek and some kind of graduated scales. This couldn't be part of a statue. It was some kind of complex mechanism. But what was it? What could this device possibly do? Created in an age when the pinnacle of engineering was considered to be a Roman aqueduct or a catapult. The initial reaction from the scientific community was predictable. Skepticism. Many scientists declared it was impossible. They suggested the mechanism was a later artifact that had simply ended up at the shipwreck. Site by chance perhaps, part of a medieval clock or a navigational instrument that had fallen into the sea centuries later. The idea that the ancient Greeks or Romans could have created a mechanism with so many complex gears seemed absurd. After all, according to the accepted history of technology, the differential gear, which appeared to be present in the device, was not invented until the 16th century. And such complex gear trains only became commonplace in the 18th century with the advent of precise marine craft. The Antikythera mechanism was at least 1500 years ahead of its time. It was an anachronism, a technological ghost, an artifact out of time. It was like finding a pocket calculator in Tutankhamun's tomb. But as researchers continued to study the strange object, it became increasingly clear that it was genuine. Chemical analysis of the bronze and the style of the inscriptions all indicated that it was created around the 2nd or 1st century BCE and had sunk with the ship. The mystery only deepened. For decades, scientists wrestled with the puzzle. The mechanism was in terrible condition. 3 main fragments and dozens of smaller pieces, all corroded into a single mass. It was impossible to look inside without destroying it completely. Researchers could only make educated guesses based on what was visible on the outside. They speculated it was some kind of navigational instrument, perhaps an astronomical, but the complexity of the mechanism clearly pointed to something more. The real breakthrough in understanding the Antikythera mechanism would only come at the end of the 20th and the beginning of the 21st century. With the advent of new technologies, the true revolution in the study of the Antikythera mechanism began with the arrival of technologies its creators could never have dreamed of. In the 1970s, British science historian Derek de Sala Price, using X-ray imaging, was the first to peer inside the compressed fragments. What he saw stunned him. He counted more than 30 individual gears connected in a highly complex system of trains. He realized this was no mere it was a mechanical calendar that modeled the movements of celestial. Price theorized that the mechanism could predict the positions of the sun and moon. But even his bold conclusions were just the tip of the iceberg. The true genius of the ancient engineers only became clear in the early 2000s, when an international team, the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project, took on the challenge. They employed the most advanced research methods available. A custom-built 8-ton X-ray computed tomography scanner allowed them to create a complete 3D model of the mechanism's internal workings without destroying it. Every screw, every gear, every inscription was revealed to the scientists in exquisite detail, and a technique called polynomial texture mapping made it possible to read even the most faded and illegible inscriptions on the surface. It was then that the incredible complexity and functionality of this ancient computer were finally revealed. It turned out that the Antikythera mechanism was not just a calendar. It was a highly sophisticated astronomical calculator, housed in a wooden case the size of a shoebox, with bronze dials on the front and back. The front panel featured a main dial with 2 pointers. One showed the position of the sun against the zodiac constellations throughout the year, and the other showed the position of the moon. But that wasn't all. Hidden inside the lunar pointer was another tiny mechanism that displayed the phases of the moon. A small silver ball, half black and half white, rotated to perfectly mimic the waxing and waning of the moon in the night sky. But the most astonishing features were hidden on the back panel. Their 2 large spiral dials were arranged like labyrinths. The upper spiral was the so-called metonic cycle. The ancient Greeks knew that every 19 years, or 235 lunar months, the phases of the moon fall on the same days of the solar year. This dial allowed for the precise reconciliation of the lunar and solar calendars, which was critical for agriculture and religious festivals. The lower spiral was even more complex. This was the Saros cycle, a tool used by Babylonian astronomers. They had observed that solar and lunar eclipses repeat in a specific sequence every 18 years and 11 days. This dial not only indicated the date of a possible eclipse, but also, using special symbols, predicted whether it would be solar or lunar, and even what time of day it would occur. But how could the mechanism predict these complex astronomical cycles? The secret lay at its heart in a brilliant system of gear trains. Scientists discovered an incredibly intricate design consisting of dozens of gears, some no bigger than a coin. But the most incredible find of all was a differential gear. This is a mechanism that can add or subtract the rotational speeds of 2 different inputs. To put it simply, imagine you need to model the apparent motion of the moon across the sky. We know the moon orbits the Earth, but the Earth also orbits the sun. To get the moon's actual position as we see it, you need to account for both of these motions. The differential gear in the Antikythera mechanism did exactly that. It took the moon's average motion as a baseline and then added a correction to account for the ellipticity of its orbit. The moon doesn't move across the sky at a constant speed. It moves faster when it is closer to Earth and slower when it is farther away. The mechanism accounted for this irregularity, known as the moon's first anomaly, using a system of epicyclic gearing where one gear not only rotates but also rides along the circumference of another. This was a level of mathematical and engineering sophistication that humanity was thought to have mastered only during the Renaissance, in the time of Leonardo da Vinci or even later. And here it was, implemented in this small bronze box, 1500 years earlier. What's more, the mechanism also predicted the dates of the major Panhellenic games, the Olympian Mytian Games. For year dial, a special pointer indicated in which year and where the next games would be held. This transformed it from a purely scientific instrument into an important social tool, a kind of organizer for the ancient Greek world. All of this was enclosed in a wooden case, with a detailed user manual engraved on its bronze doors. The deciphered inscriptions, some with letters just a millimeter high, described how the device worked and what astronomical phenomena it displayed. This was not just a device, it was an entire mechanical universe, a model of the cosmos as the ancient Greeks understood it. By turning a knob on the side, a user could travel forward or backward in time, observing how the planets would align, when the next eclipse would occur, or when the next Olympic Games would begin. It was an educational tool, a luxury item, and perhaps even a philosophical instrument, demonstrating the harmony and predictability of celestial mechanics. Who could have created such a marvel? The name of the brilliant craftsman is, unfortunately, unknown, but analysis of the inscription style and astronomical cycles has narrowed the search. Most scientists today agree that the mechanism was likely created on the island of Rhodes, which at the time was a major center of Greek astronomy and engineering. Perhaps its creator was the great astronomer Hipparchus. It was he who discovered the precession of the equinoxes and developed the theory of the moon's motion that appears to be the basis for the mechanism's operation. Another theory links it to Archimedes of Syracuse. The Roman orator Cicero wrote of seeing two spheres built by Archimedes that modeled the movements of the planets. Perhaps the Antikythera Mechanism is one of these devices, or a later version created by the followers of Archimedes. But whoever this nameless genius was, he possessed knowledge far beyond his era, and he was not alone. The creation of such a complex instrument would have required an entire school of mathematicians, metallurgists, and virtuoso mechanics capable of crafting dozens of intricate parts with jewel-like precision. This means the Antikythera Mechanism was not a random flash of a lone genius. It was the pinnacle of an entire, long-lost technological tradition. The culmination of the Antikythera Mechanism's story was not its tragic loss in the depths of the sea, but its second birth in the 21st century. It was the moment when, thanks to modern technology, scientists were finally able to fully reconstruct its operation and grasp the full scale of its creator's genius. Picture the scene: an international team of researchers gathered in Athens, seeing for the first time a complete, working 3D model on a computer screen. All 37 known gears click into place, and the virtual mechanism comes to life. The pointers begin to move, showing the motion of the sun and moon, predicting and counting down the years to the next Olympic Games.